It is time. Okay, going to go ahead and call the September 9th, 2024 Peachtree City Planning Commission meeting to order. If everyone would, in attendance, please rise and join me in pledging allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to have a bit of a different or unusual meeting tonight. The two new agenda items that were on the docket were withdrawn. So we'll go ahead and go through the items here down the list and then go right into the workshop. So any additions or deletions other than the deletions that we currently have?
No, sir.
Okay. Announcements and reports.
Just that the next September meeting, I think is on the 23rd, is going to be a pretty big agenda. It's also going to be Miss Johnston's last meeting. So, but do plan on, there's at least two, we were debating trying to keep it in my head. That's why I write things down, so I don't have to keep it in my head. There are at least two public hearings, as well as you wanting to discuss some of these items, as well as several plans, landscape plans.
Yeah, we'll have to, I think we'll have to look and see what the full agenda is. Mm-hmm. Definitely would love to, keep some time allocated for, the ordinances and everything for that. But if we start getting awful long, we'll just have to see what it is, and then we'll have to talk about it and see what makes sense.
Sure.
So, okay. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
No? Okay. Approval of minutes. Everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from the August 26th. Any comments or questions related to that? No? Okay. That being said, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted. And a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved as submitted. No public hearing, no old agenda items, no new agenda items. So we will go ahead right into the workshop item, which is the Planning Commission presentation to City Council about ordinance updates. And
So, Mr. Hamner sent out some questions that I wanted to focus on tonight. So I've put together the Word document. We're going to open that up and just kind of start tackling these. So this is, your discussion. I'm here to help provide information and answers, and I will take notes.
Wonderful.
you want to go ahead and?
I'll just set it up real
Yeah.
quick. So obviously we've been talking about the development regulation proposals and ultimately putting them in front of City Council. And in our previous conversations, we brought up a few questions about certain topics, and as well, we've also received some questions from other members of the Planning Commission as well. So what this document does is it's just taking all those questions that have been brought up recently from our conversations and also what we've talked about over email, put them within one document right here. And like Robin was saying, we can go through this one by one, talk through them. I will say, we maybe don't need to have them fully developed and answered tonight. But, as we think about the presentation that we're going to be giving, which is now in November, by the way, that's officially now in place. We've gone from September to October. Why not November for our presentation? So, we do have some time to continue to develop and our answers to these questions. We can add additional questions as well over time on this. But again, we have a lot coming up over the next few meetings. So we can really, I would suggest we really dig into these tonight while we have the time. and then have further discussions as needed, really just to refine the answers, do any follow-ups if we have any, if, you know, as we're talking through these, we uncover anything that requires a deeper dig, et cetera, on this. So with that, that's my spiel.
Sure. I'd say let's just go ahead and work our way through. And actually, number one, which is what specific concerns or opinions will the council members express regarding the proposals. I actually did have an opportunity in another setting to actually talk with one of the council members. And what was kind of expressed to me was a concern related to their experience in doing some other planning and things like that in a previous job. And really what that was is their concern was they don't want to see this turn into basically a cookie cutter operation for design guidelines, more so in building styles. And I think there's some, I don't want to say misunderstanding, but maybe there's a little bit of that because that's really, as I told this council member, that's the last thing I want to see. You know, we want to give, you know, the opportunity for creativity. I think, you know, what we did with the Highway 74 or Highway 54 West was give allowances that, well, hey, you know, you don't have to have this canopy made out of 1800 denier, but it needs to be within these bounds. You know, coverings need to be within these bounds. Lighting has to be within these bounds, but you don't have to go out and put that specific light from that specific manufacturer into your design. So I think really is trying to set up those kind of goalposts and allow that, like I said, creativity, but still keeping the overall not like I said, not the cookie cutter, but keeping that cohesiveness that we have, but allowing something to really happen with those, and whether that be within the village centers, whether that's between the village centers, however that's set up. But I think that was one of the concerns that came from that council member was, you know, we don't want this to be where every building looks exactly the same. And you go down through the development and every building looks exactly the same. And again, I told that person that that's not what, at least my intention, I don't believe that's our intentions are. And hopefully that will be addressed and that person's, you know, concerns will be, you know, taken care of when we actually put the presentation in front of council. So that was one of the things, and I, again, tried to explain that, you know, to them for they had a better understanding of that, so.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've always been open to, you know, upscale designs, not necessarily that they need to be the same, but something that just makes sense for our community. And we've never really adhered to a single standard when we approve things, except for obviously landscape designs as much as we can. But, you know, even those are varied in interesting ways. So, yeah, I agree 100%.
You said something that I think that we can just be really direct when we're doing the presentation, which is allow for creativity while promoting cohesiveness.
That's perfect.
Yep. And I think that we can, again, just clearly state that, especially when we're talking about the UDO portion of this. And really, again, you know, we kind of have this in the draft right now, but really say that the UDO is really about overall regulations that would apply everywhere, but have a lot of flexibility, while the overlay districts, that's so much more directive, but still not to the point where it's like, you have to use this light and this bulb or anything like that.
And I think that was one of the things, again, I was trying to come across with that individual was, you know, there will be things, you know, we want to ensure that, perfect example, Primrose came up just recently. And they were actually able to go in and find some space for golf cart parking, which is great. And, you know, we want to ensure that when developers come forward, whether it's new development or redevelopment, that is there, that they have to consider as part of the ordinance, golf cart parking. How it connects again, you know, to the cart paths. You know, the move as we go forward with EV charging, whether it be golf cart charging or actual EV charging. So those are the things that I think is the cohesiveness that we'll see across, but allowing that creativity to permeate through the UDO, that they can come and propose something in front of, you know, the planning commission and take a look at it and say, yeah, we like it, or no, and let's go this direction. So, but allow them to, you know, utilize their expertise to come up with something interesting, so.
Right.
I think one of
What-
the conversations that continued or occurred multiple times during the last UDO was some, I don't want to say confusion, because it's not ignorance or anything like that, but these development ordinances are from soup, you know, to nuts. They are everything from how you grade the property to how stormwater is handled to what is the architectural finish on a building, you know. And so I think what you're interested in, people tend to focus on that thing. And so I think it would be important to continue to emphasize that the UDO is a restructuring of the ordinances, not a recreation.
Right.
So it's, you know, in that spreadsheet that I started, you'll notice some of them are just, this section over here, 1308, is duplicative or similar to section 1108. Why don't we put them together and not have them in two different places? We had a conversation with a developer last week, and it took us forever. We knew that there was this ordinance that grants the planning director the ability to do some minor modifications to that landscape buffer, but we haven't had to do anything like that in a while, and we looked forever. It's in the definition. It's not even in the actual ordinance, it's in the definition, which is a big legal no-no. So those are the kinds of things too that need to happen at the UDO, is that's sort of that restructuring part and not recreating, but then taking that opportunity to add in those things or even update those things that it's time to do. You know, drive-through bypass lanes, golf cart parking. We had a discussion today, how do you define an overstory tree or a canopy? First of all, overstory tree isn't even defined, but a canopy tree is, but that's not in our ordinance. Anyway, what's the magic line? There are some things that we need to know that could help us. And then you have that opportunity to then go to more of that architectural stuff is sort of kind of at the end of the process.
I have a few questions, Scott, on this discussion line. I think in terms of the architectural and some of those standards, you know, I think what we're really looking at is themes for those different districts, and maybe the language should talk about that kind of stuff. And we're really talking about performance standards, not just use this light and do that.
Right, that's a good
It's a
way to put it, yeah.
performance type standard that says, this is what we want to achieve. How you do it, we're open to suggestions, but this is what we want to have at the end of the process. So maybe that's something we can include in that. And then to follow up on something that Robin was talking about, I was one of the citizens on the UDO committee when everything went off the rails the last time. And there was a misunderstanding about what was potentially being changed and what wasn't. And I think at least from my perspective, it was just a codification of the ordinances and nothing else was going to change. But I think as part of the process, like some of the things that Robin's talking about, there are going to be some recommendations to change some things to improve efficiency of the planning staff, or correct things that we would like to see corrected that in the ordinances that are not working. So I think it should be clearly stated in the presentation to the council that that may be part of what you're seeing, that there may be changes to some of the ordinance sections with respect to the criteria and not just moving things around and getting them in order. At least that's the way I looked at it.
That's a great point.
Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts? Comments? I guess we'll go ahead down, like I said, go down the list. Do we propose members on the UDO committee outside of the planning commission?
We had talked about this a little bit, I think, when you guys first brought this to our attention, this presentation. And I think after discussion, you know, we had said, well, maybe a city council member would be nice to kind of loop in some opinions from that group, just because of potential, we don't want them to be surprised later on. But you know, one of the things I think that somebody had said, whether it be staff or someone here, was that folks can show up to these meetings.
Mhm.
Any citizen can come. And so I don't think it's necessary that we have a city council member on the committee, but I think it'd be highly encouraged that they show up and participate in some of the discussions that we would have.
I agree, and I, again, one of the individuals I was talking with brought up a point, and I'll just go ahead and say it. They basically said, keep city council out of it, to be honest. And not keep city council out of it, but
Yeah.
keep city council
Not out, but off.
but off.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was one of those where, and my response was, well, you know, we need you involved. You know, you're going to be, you know, we're going to have to have a budget. You know, we're going to have to give budget updates. We're going to have to get approvals. We're going to have to do this. We're going to have to do that. We're going to need sanity checks along the way. So as I told him, I said, I definitely would like you to be involved, but I think it's exactly what you're saying, you know, and it's kind of brought up. They don't need to be a quote unquote, you know, member on this. And I think that's at least one of the people I spoke with, that's what they don't want to be a member. And I think that may be the
Right.
general consensus is to allow this to work its way with us and whoever else we bring in along the way.
Right. I mean, first of all, I agree with that, but we shouldn't have a city council member on it. But you also said, you know, this is such a huge project. There's going to have to be some sort of involvement, and even if it's just updating city council.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah, just maybe like every 6 months. I mean, this thing's gonna last for years.
We'll have to put a project plan together. We're gonna have to have, you know, in what I've worked on, you know, preliminary design reviews, critical design, but we're gonna have to have those gates that we've got to this point, and is this okay? You know, and yes, it is okay. Here we can go to the next gate and work that part of the process. So,
Yeah.
but that's from kind of the council standpoint. From members on the UDO outside the planning commission, you know, I definitely would like to have, as I've said, the subject matter experts. How we approach those people, how we identify those people, how we approach those people. That's something I think we still need to figure out once we, you know, get a little bit more into this. I think it's very important that we utilize that knowledge that we don't have. So yeah, I do see people in what capacity, you know, their involvement is. Is it a specific area that we need help with and we're able to go? Are they, you know, kind of a, you know, member of it? That I'm not sure.
You have to identify those people fairly quickly, though, right? Because the
Well-
city council would have to appoint them to the committee, just like they would appoint us to the committee. Is that right?
Yes, and they just recently created two committees, the Recreational Advisory Committee and the Transportation Advisory Committee, and they consist of a spectrum of folks, which you all represent a spectrum of our residents. And then it was brought up, well, should we make it larger and start including all of these other experts? And at the council meeting, an idea was said, well, when we broach a topic that needs a specific expertise, we would reach out to them, whether in this case it was CVB or something, but we'd reach out to the bicycle community. Come and help us address this bicycle parking issue.
Right, so they may not be on the committee, but providing input to the committee.
It's an option.
Yeah,
I like
I'm
that.
fine with that.
yeah.
I like that too.
Can I ask a big question as well? Just to make sure, is everybody on the planning commission wanting to be part of this? Is everybody cool? Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes,
Yes.
I
Okay.
am. I'm comfortable with that.
I won't be on it anyway.
You just want to be part of the UDO committee then?
Her years, she's
pressure.
looking at looking at expanding her volunteer expertise in other areas of the city. She's been a couple of years with us now. Don't want to make her feel bad. She's done a great service to our community, and I mean, you're presenting ideas or recommendations, but council is ultimately going to
Yep.
decide. And we had also talked about, maybe taking one of the 2 monthly meetings
Right.
and dedicating it to this project, which actually, I mean, a meeting once a month is, for an advisory group, that's a lot. So it may not even be once a month.
Yeah, I still like that idea of doing it once a month.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could always start with it and then
Yeah.
adjust accordingly if
Mhm.
needed.
Okay.
I think the only thoughts that I have right now concerning the topic we're talking about right now is I like the idea of no city council member. I like the idea of us updating city council on a regular basis or whatever we decide that is. The additional thought I have is I'm certainly thinking we need subject matter experts to help us, but when we get there, I think we need to be conscious of how many we actually have. At some point, there's so many people that are experts contributing information that we get to the point that we can't really move things,
Yeah. The old paralysis by analysis
Right,
sort of thing. yeah.
right. So just something to be conscious of.
That's a very good point. And I think that was brought up in a little bit of a talk also, is that it kind of started morphing into something more, something bigger, and there was a lot of, like you said, not confusion, but maybe some misunderstanding.
Right.
So, I mean, we definitely want input, but it's gonna have to be, I don't really wanna say controlled, but in some ways, I mean, that's exactly what it's gonna have to be. It's gonna have to be controlled input.
So question to you, Robin, can city council create guidelines or a structure around, making sure that we're not paralyzed by public input? Like we put a limit of, the number of minutes for public comment, or is that possible with the committee?
A lot's gonna rest on the shoulders of whoever is chairing the meeting. I think as the group, I think it's actually appropriate for you all as a group to decide how much time of a meeting do you want to contribute to. Do you want it to be so structured? I don't my gut instinct is that you don't need to limit somebody to, your 3 minutes is up, thank you.
There won't be that many people coming.
And that's really was, kind of by the third or second UDO meeting, you had about 4 or 5, people show up. And it became a workshop. It was very conversational, back and forth. And when questions came up, they asked them. They always asked, may I ask a question? I think that's kind of how a chairperson would manage the meetings. I think, though, if there's and I would say hot topic, although, make be clear, I don't think the UDO is the place to address hot topics.
Right.
But if you end up with 30 people who show up at a meeting, you set the guidelines at the very beginning of the meeting. Hey, we want to hear you, but we've got to get through X, Y, and Z, and you can sort of work with it. That's sort of my instinct, as opposed to setting a hard and fast.
Yeah, makes sense.
And-
My suggestion on the actual workshop meetings is that before each meeting, there be a list of a few things that you're gonna wanna cover that meeting.
Exactly.
Well, yeah,
So
we would
that-
definitely have an
yeah,
agenda.
That's gonna be
yeah.
able to corral in the commenting and focus it on those topics, so
Right.
that it doesn't get too big in one meeting.
Right. Yeah, we did for SPLOST. Obviously we had a topic for every meeting that we did. We had people that came in when we were downstairs in the basement that would come in and speak as well, and it was very, like Robin, like you said, it was very conversational on it, and it worked. That process worked really well.
Yeah.
So, will you be participating, Robin? Will you be attending the meetings? And the only reason
Yes,
I asked, okay,
absolutely.
Okay.
That would be appropriate.
okay,
I would not be, I would not be chairing the meeting.
Sure.
I would be providing, I would say advice, but really just sort of knowledge base, and then taking directions.
the reason I ask is because for me, the most productive type meetings that at least I've been involved with, there's always someone there that kind of keeps everybody like us focused on what are we
Yes.
trying to do.
Yes.
Because at some point you get input from the public, and it's all great ideas. But we need that one person, I feel, that keeps us focused on what we're trying to do up here.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
So, question, going back to the bringing in experts, is there like a bank of experts that you're aware of? Again, like, we're talking about bringing in experts, but like, we would have to know what experts are available, who they are. Is there anything like that can get us started?
It's not that organized. It isn't.
Okay.
I mean, it would be just your local elected officials know folks. Obviously, if it's development related or planning related, we know folks. City engineer with the traffic, transportation. And I think we could also put out, when we put out the agendas, which we will have to do, we can say, topic of discussion tonight, roadway design or something like that, roadway categories or something, so that we could send that out and people know, hey, that's something I'm interested in. I'd like to talk about that. But, city engineer, yeah, sorry, I'm a little
No,
rambling
but-
here, but that's,
Answers my question.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of takes care of item 3.
Oh, it does.
Mhm.
So, and I just actually looked at item 3, so yeah, it kind of
Well-
takes care of item 3 in some ways.
I guess there's also the other side of it, that there might be, and I feel there is going to be the need of some kind of a professional in the planning, land development industry to help pull all of this together after we've developed all of the things that we're gonna
yeah, and legal.
recommend.
And we will need some
Right.
legal advice too.
Yeah.
So that's where your consultant, I mean, if, we will, of course, if that's not the road that the council decides on, we will do the best we can. But a consultant is a great resource for those experts as well.
So we might need to skip to number 6 and go ahead and talk about the budget concerning that, if that's,
Well,
I mean,
I had an interesting conversation with our previous consultant, and they feel very comfortable coming back. So that's always an option. And with what I think this type of process would cost, it's going to be more than $40,000, which will require us to do an RFP anyway. So when we put that out, we can decide how, last time we got 6 or 7 back, and if we get 6 or 7 quality, that would be great. If we don't, then we can go from there. What is that football term called? Punt? What's that?
So
Maybe.
I took a look at the most recent comprehensive plan, and there's actually a line item in it for that specific thing. Hiring a consultant to help with a UDO effort. And it was north of 100,000 in terms of budgeting, and that was a few years ago when that got done. So I don't think it would be out of bounds to see a number like that.
And that's
No.
what the RFP process will help us.
Right.
Because if you've got, like we had last time, you've got a range, and they typically fall in that range.
So for the money that would be allocated towards this, I've heard different things. I've heard that we'd have to pull it from, we would have to pull it from something else or allocate it from something else, or it already exists, because from the last time,
Well,
I'm
what
not clear as to.
What I've been told is that it was a capital improvement program. So we've got our general fund pot of money, we've got your SPLOST pot of money, and then a couple of different pots, and then you have a CIP pot of money. And so when we didn't spend all of the money for the UDO, it still stayed in that pot. It did not transfer over to the general fund.
Right.
So it is sitting there. Obviously, we've spent some of it, and obviously, it goes into what's called contingency. And for construction projects that are over, it's not, slush fund isn't the right word, but I'm old school, and that's kind of how I think about it, is that when construction projects go 15% over, that's what that money, and so some of it has been used for that. But, if council, it's really up to council. If they want to move forward with this, then that's actually how they make it happen, is through the budgeting process.
Robin, do you think there's any opportunity for state planning grants of any kind for something like this?
Not through the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I don't think we would get anything through the ARC. Their grants are either very tailored or not appropriate. Then they're more urbanized. I don't think that there's just not a lot of depth and funding for planning, except through our infrastructure bill through federal. But and again, it's for specific infrastructure. It's not for this type. It's for, if we wanted to somehow create affordable housing, well, here's your money. This doesn't apply to that.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think
Because
so.
that's why I was thinking when we talked about this before, as if we're looking at EV charging, if we're doing that, you pull into that green energy sort of thing. Are there anything available if we're saying, hey, we're going to?
It's more for the next step.
That's-
There are grants
that's-
for the next step of,
right.
okay, you've said you want to do it, now let's draw a map of where you want them to happen. It can pay for that, what's called design phase.
Okay.
And then there's also then grants for implementation. For
But
those,
nothing for the big picture like that. That's
not unless, and I'm not, I don't want anybody out there to say, well, actually there are funds. Yes, there are federal funds. That's if you wanted to redo your zoning categories and get rid of single-family housing. That is not on the table here.
Yeah.
And so technically, yes, there are funds out there, but not for what we need it for.
And, and it sounds like we've got a good way forward with this CIP fund. At least there's something there. If we do need funds, I'm not very tied into the nonprofit community locally here, but I know where I am from in Illinois, there are such things as community foundations where you could apply for money that's been entrusted by to that group of people. And there may be local uses for that money that are that rise to, you know, to merit the use of those funds. So if we need funds, we can maybe look into something like
And
that.
the city has just hired a grants coordinator. So, and that's her specialty, is helping us find the money. So, and I'm meeting with her next week.
Good.
Great.
It's good.
Put us on the top of the list.
Hey, you guys are always on top of my list.
And it's good to hear that the previous consultant is still open. But like you said, because of the cost, they'll have to go through an RFP, but it's good, because that was a concern, I know.
Yes, it was
as
mine, yep.
How things ended, unfortunately, but I'm glad they're open to it.
Good.
Good.
So number 4.
Yeah, any other cities, municipalities in our general area? I know Fayetteville has one. I haven't had a chance to really start taking a look at it, but I know they do. I don't know any.
Yes, so
What else?
when we started this, we started collecting UDOs from the metro Atlanta area. And they range from countywide UDOs to very, more of the urban sort of Fayetteville, Main Street type of UDO. And so there are definitely examples out there. Keep in mind, even the readable ones are very good replacements for your nightly nightcap.
But it's always good. I think I brought it up last time, is my work on HOAs as architectural control. That was one of the things that I always asked from the property management company. You know, can you get me, you know, the ACC guidelines for Smoke Rise, for Whitewater Creek, for some of the ones. And it was always good, just again, kind of as a sanity check, to say, hey, you know, along the lake, they're not allowed to have fencing that blocks the lake view. Well, my neighborhood, we didn't have any language like that. So it was like, you know what, that's something good we need to have. So
And we
little
can-
things like that just kind of make you think.
Yeah.
So
And, you know, if, as we move forward, if this becomes an official project, there will be a website, and we can have a library of these kinds of resources, so that I don't fill your inbox with
Perfect.
50 megabyte documents.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
yes, thank you.
SharePoint site or something.
Yeah.
No, and just to add to that, I mean, I think, Robin, you did a nice job of kind of giving us comparables when we did the short-term rental stuff, when
Yeah.
we did the
Yeah.
admin variance, you know, so.
Don't waste your wheel or don't waste
Yeah.
your time recreating the wheel.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
yeah. I think those were good comparative cities.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, how will remote participation in committee meetings be facilitated while adhering to voting regulations?
So, we can do them as long as there's no public hearings or voting occurring. You know, so if we were to have a discussion of, sort of like what we did for the administrative variance, where you had one meeting that was, hey, here's the brain dump, go ruminate on it for the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and then at the next meeting, might have to be in person, so that you can actually make decisions. You know, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can alternate between, as you all find it appropriate, however you decide.
Yeah. I guess whenever we know that folks might be out of town, we would have that kind of a meeting,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Because really, from a voting standpoint, I mean, that really won't,
Even then,
that really
you're not,
won't come to the end.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're not, I mean, you're making decisions, but it's not, unless it turns into, I hope it never turns into, it's so close that we need a straw vote, cause then that's not ideal.
Right.
But as long as you're not voting, and even then, you're making recommendations.
Right. Yeah, it's just a recommendation at the end to,
So as long as
Send it to
there's no
council.
recommendations, we could be
Yeah.
virtual.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's good habit, though, to make sure we have a few in person.
person.
oh,
Well,
definitely,
yeah.
yeah.
And for conversations like over email, things like that, that's still, what are your
I
thoughts?
don't mind sharing information over email, you know,
Right.
But I don't think we should say, well, this is what my decision is, or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's in line with what we've been doing, so.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
Let's see, what are all the ordinances that will be addressed? Can we finalize a list and get those details for our reference?
So, Laura and I, part of the process is finding those issues. I mean, we've been keeping a tally over the years, but lots of folks or communities that enter into this process, they haven't. They just know that the sniff test isn't being passed, and so they hire these consultants, and they're the ones who actually go through and say, hey, this looks odd, or there's problems here. So in many ways, we're already ahead of the game. I don't think we'll ever be perfect. I don't think we'll ever find every single error. But as far as the general areas of ordinances that we're looking at, I think we should stay away from signs. I don't think we should include signs. Our city attorney thinks that signage is such a unique constitutional right that it should be its own chapter as opposed to in the UDO. But there's no problem, talking about, we've got a chapter on building, we've got a chapter on building codes, we've got a chapter on health, which includes the noise ordinance. We've got a chapter on the LDO and the zoning, and actually there's even finance. There's how you can, but I don't know if I would touch that one. So at least those 4.
Sorry, could you repeat the first 2 again? You said building and
So building construction
building construction.
and health. There's a chapter, I think 42 is
Okay.
on health.
Yeah, building construction, health, LDO, and zoning.
Mhm.
Those are the questions. Got through all 8.
So as far as getting like a finalized list, we've started that spreadsheet, and if you guys, as you kind of look at that, if it's not communicating the information, if you don't understand what it's trying to say to you, then let me know and I can try to fix it. You'll see that there was a column on general category, like, is this just moving one section to another? Is that sort of reorganization? We have a whole, one of the consultants, first consultant notified, is we put all of our rezonings in our ordinance. That's not normal. So we could probably get rid of 50 pages of our land use, of our zoning ordinance by just removing those. And we have files already on those. So that you'll see there was a bunch of them that said, I think just remove. There was some that said, the general category was, hey, this is procedure. Like, we used to do, procedurally, your plats had to be paper, they had to be Mylar actually, it had to be a specific site. Well, now the city clerks don't even take paper, it's electronic, so that there's sort of a general category, then there's the what is it, and then there was a recommendation. But, we can, as we go through this, as the committee gets appointed, we can get as deep in the weeds as folks want to get.
I thought this was a nice starter spreadsheet for me because being on the commission for the last year, I've always looked for more information on the plans that we're getting. So one of the things that this triggered in my thought process was, should we be looking at the checklists as part of this to say, when somebody does a site plan concept and submits it, should there be more information in the plan than we're getting?
And that checklist was specifically designed and organized by the ordinance, so it is the ordinance, is that those checklists that we have.
So that's the question. Is there some other information that we might want to see that would help us make a decision on a concept plan? And a good example was, there was the big commercial industrial facility on 74, and I questioned, did the concept plan show the removal of all the trees that they ended up removing? So my thought was, well, should the concept plan potentially show an anticipated limit of disturbance? Should it show what trees are gonna remain so that you can hold them accountable later if they don't do what the concept plan shows? I mean, it's those kinds of things that are triggered in my mind about this really nice start list.
Good.
And we've asked for more. I mean, and that's always good because it gives us, like you said, it gives us a better idea of what things are gonna look like. And I would hope that they're already beyond that when they're submitting the concept. They
should know.
They should know. They
Should
not
know.
all the details, but they should have a pretty good idea as to this is what it's gonna kind of look like, you know. But and again, you know, I mean, that's not written in stone and everything because it is a concept, but it's always good to have that little extra just to help us visualize what it's gonna be. So, yeah. Now, Robin, you had mentioned about is it just recreation, the new recreation committee? Is it just recreation or exactly what is? Because I know that was brought up.
So
Right.
the recreational advisory.
Advisory, yes.
It's the ragtag. So there's the recreational advisory group, and then there's the transportation advisory group.
Okay.
And
And the reason why I'm asking that is that if well, a couple things. So first is as we're going through and we see something that in the ordinance that may be more of a recreation or something, or we say, hey, you know, that's something we may want to think about.
we could take it to them.
Take it to them, have them kind of go through, same thing from a transportation, so utilize those.
Yeah.
And another thing that was brought up was, you know, utilizing something, you know, we have a lot of great spaces, and I think it was brought up before as to, you know, art and statuary and things like that. Would that fall into this, or would that
Not
go to
typically.
something?
Typically,
'Cause
you'd have like
we
an
don't
arts
really
and
have
cultural.
anything
right.
like that, so
I mean, you can. You can have a combination. Typically, you've got an arts or a cultural advisory committee or something like
Mhm.
that, who has then their policies that they try to implement through the development process. And at this time, we don't have anything like that.
Now, as part of this, if we identify something like that, because I know I've had a couple discussions with some other people, and one of the things that came up is, again, you know, we have some great spaces along lakes, and I even thought, well, we have all children's playground. You know, it'd be great to have some children's artwork from children in our community, to just kind of have it out there. And if we see something like that as something if it's not really part of the ordinance, but is that something we can recommend then
Yes.
back to city council and saying, hey, there's something here that
Yeah.
we think,
Yeah, there's
we
this
would like-
hole in our development ordinance for cultural contributions,
Yeah.
whether that's through financial contributions of new developments to this fund that funds art, or if it's you're required to provide it, or whatever it may be, there is definitely
okay.
a hole.
So just be like a point of interest that we would make to city council?
Yeah, so I would think that your final recommendation would include, you know, a document, but as well as sort of like an executive summary, which would be sort of the overarching recommendations, which include, in addition to adoption of this ordinance, we also recommend creation of X,
But
Y,
I
and
would,
Z.
I would hope that as we get along the way, we wouldn't, I mean, if this is going to be truly a, you know, 2-year process, or whatever that number of time may be, if we see something like that, you know, we'd be able to go to and say, hey, as we've been working through this, we really think that we need, as Peachtree City, this thing, and put something together and propose it to council, or just bring it to council and say, hey, think about this. because we see a gap here and not wait to the very end and then have to, how does that plug back in or not, or how's it
Well, and you
referenced and
can-
things like that.
And you can organize the document, the UDO itself, so that there is this clear reserved space for coming soon.
Yes, that's what I'm kind of thinking from a, yeah, okay.
Did you get all the answers you were looking for with these
We
questions?
did.
Yeah, okay.
We
good.
got them all. We got all 8.
Great.
So what do you need from staff to prepare for our next discussion about this? If you don't have an answer now, we can touch base later too.
I don't have an immediate answer. Probably
Okay.
what I'll do is I'll take this and start working on the presentation again, and then share it out, and then I'll call out if there's any gaps that are there, and of course, again, I'd love additional input in the future as well on what's being put in there, and we'll go from there.
Ken, what's the date in November for the presentation?
Is it the 21st?
Is it?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
the later. It's the
I
later
think
part.
it's 21st. That's
Thank
the evening.
So, and yes, you all, we've talked about it, how council has changed, they haven't changed, I mean, they're still meeting twice a month, but the first meeting is more of that workshop and the second meeting is the voting, which is going to result in, because of the state law timing for public hearings, is gonna result in, more often than not, some of your meetings are going to be bigger than others. And so it may work out that maybe give yourself some time to work on this presentation and give us, not a break, but the 23rd agenda is pretty heavy, so maybe it'll be the first October agenda
Right.
that we can work
Yeah.
on it, talk about it.
Okay,
Sounds good.
makes sense. Okay.
So, I'm sorry. I've heard you mention the 23rd agenda a couple times. Is that our meeting or the council's meeting?
Our meeting.
It is our meeting, yes ma'am.
Okay, so, okay. I got it. It's that Monday.
That's right.
And the first meeting in October would be the 7th?
It's
then?
actually the 14th
The
because
14th.
of the way the dates line up.
Okay.
Just a heads up, I'm gonna have to miss that meeting. It's fall
Okay.
break for the
Yeah,
kids.
it's a fall break.
It's fall break?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, look at that, it's on my calendar and I still didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
that problem anymore.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any, because I don't have any public hearings for that, but I'm not ready to pull the trigger on recommending canceling it at this point, if that's all right.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay. Is that
so
all
have to
right?
see who's available and what comes up between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess any other discussion that we would
This
like
was
to
great.
have?
This was really good.
Yeah. And look at that. My mom always said, if you have a meeting over an hour, you're not getting it done. Here we are.
There you go.
In an hour.
That's right.
Good job.
Okay.
We're off to a great start. Every meeting's gonna be.
Yep.
If only.
She wouldn't have
So
been impressed
easy.
with the last meeting, that's what she.
So instead of water for the September 23rd, can we bring coffee? Or
I'll bring
Jolt
coffee and
or something?
chocolate. How
Or-
about that?
I like that, thank you.
I'll
So-
take special requests.
Yeah, so right now we have a minimum 2 public hearings, possibly 3, or do we have 3?
She thinks we have 3. My brain is farted.
No, I think chickens is on the 14th.
Oh, okay, so that's October.
I think so.
Okay. So,
That's not something you hear every day.
Well, that's right.
so
Chickens are on the
So-
2 public
So bummed
hearings.
to miss chickens.
Well, and like the administrative variance, you know, we'll have sort of that public hearing, information's presented, but I'm not anticipating decisions to being made that night, unless you all surprise me and you can get it done. But I don't know, I tend to like to spend time thinking about things.
But that is something that council would like to have
Mhm.
taken care of before the end of the year, correct?
They would, December, January, because we know that December, we don't usually have 2 meetings.
Right.
But, I will, I will say that I think the majority of the council would prefer you all to be thoughtful and thorough
Mhm.
rather than fast. So
Right.
if we can't get it done by December or January, but you all are still working on it, I think we'd be okay.
Okay.
They were very, very complimentary of the work that you did on the administrative variance process,
Appreciate that.
ordinance, and they were singing your kudos at their last meeting.
Appreciate that. Yeah,
That's nice.
yeah,
Very
very
nice.
nice.
Good?
Okay, anything else from staff?
No, not from us.
Nothing? Okay. Anything else from commissioners? Nothing?
No, I just like to thank you for all the work you've done.
Yes.
These pieces of information that you've given us
Yeah.
to wrap our head around have been
Okay,
great.
good.
Yeah, very
I
much
know.
appreciated, and definitely want to give my appreciation to Kenneth for his continuing work on this. Thank you. So, yeah.
Glad to do it.
Okay, therefore, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Very good.